Hi and welcome or welcome back. It's Carol from Crinkled Path Journals, and I'm here with another memory keeping in my altered book. So I pulled this page with these little farm animals, and I picked the song, The Farmer and the Dell. Growing up, going to our family farm, ancestral family farm every summer, I considered myself quite the farm girl. And I still live on our tiny farm here in California. We have a garden and an orchard and some goats and chickens, and it's not a full-fledged farm, but we love our little farm. The song The Farmer in the Dell was something I remember from kindergarten very distinctly, because you had to stand in a circle, and as they sang the song, it started with the farmer in the middle, and then he'd have to pick the other things in the song, or he would pick his wife, the wife would pick a child would pick a nurse, the nurse would take a dog, the dog would pick a cat, the cat would take a rat, and then the rat would pick the cheese. And then everybody would leave the circle, and the cheese would stay in the circle alone. And the last verse of the song says, "The cheese stands alone." I always kind of identified with the cheese. I was alone a lot, but I wanted to take some time today to do a page where I could put down some memories, not just about this song, which was cute and silly and fun, but about the positives of being alone. Because while there were often times that it was a negative thing for me, I'm really trying to dwell on positives, and I actually can think of some things that were a positive for me. And so I'm going to start this page by doing I'm going to use this acknowledgements page, and I want to make some flip out cards that I can journal on, and I want to use the song as the background, sort of like I did on the last page, only I covered a lot of it. And this time I'm not going to cover it any more than to maybe put the cheese on it. I don't know, I may end up going this way again. Whoops, where am I? Lost my page. There it is. I think I'm going to go this way with it again. I might cut the verses out and put them along the little flip outs on the journaling cards. I have music on the back of this. I want to cover it, so I was thinking about doing more of a neutral collage on this, because I had so much fun collaging the other day, and I love collage, but I really like the randomness of the kind of collage where you're just trying to give a neutral background or a solid background. I thought it would be fun to go ahead and do that on here, and so let's get going. I thought I would try and talk while I collage a little bit here about what I'm going to journal about, because I'm not going to journal on screen, and I'm going to dig for some neutral papers. So some solids and maybe some lighter colors. Being home alone a lot, I feel like it did give me some freedoms. I got to learn to make decisions on my own. I feel like I had a lot of time to create, and there was nobody there to really tell me not to make a mess or not to delve into a project that was too big. Sorry, I lost my train of thought here. I think as I was given the opportunity to just kind of create and come up with things to entertain myself, that I really gravitated towards drawing and art, and I look back on that as being a really positive thing. And I also spent a lot of time with creative play. I had a lot of kind of random dolls, not actually all Barbies, but it didn't matter to me that they weren't all the same. So I could take dolls from the dollhouse and Barbie dolls, and they could mix together just fine in my world. Let me get some glue stick. And I would come up with these very elaborate storylines, and I feel like, although I did have neighborhood friends that I played with, you know, make-believe kind of things. We'd play house, and we'd play with our Barbies and G.I. Joes. We had little boys and girls together and play. I feel like it was not necessarily a negative to have time to just kind of do my own thing. And I loved to draw. And so I spent a lot of time making things, and you could always count on there being paper and pencil in our house, because my mom was a medical secretary receptionist person, and she would often bring scrap paper home, and my dad would bring me, when they would be done with some certain form in the hospital where he worked, he would bring me the old forms, and I love to play office or secretary and play with those forms and draw on those forms. And man, as a junk journaler, don't you know, I wish I still had some of those, because they would make really cool junk journaling material at this point in my life. Maybe that's where I started my love of crazy weird paper. But so I'm gonna cut this down, but I figured I will, here actually I'm gonna turn this around where there's no color coming through there. So it doesn't really matter how I'm getting these on, because part of them might be cut off, but that's okay. Just kind of taking advantage of some of these straight edges to just put them straight out there on the edge of the paper. You know, my best friend and her brother lived down the street, and you know, it was hard to have a sibling and have to share. I don't necessarily say that as bad as it's a bad thing, but when you're kind of the only kid at home, nobody messes with your stuff. And I did have siblings, but like I said before, they were much older. Oftentimes I was left under the supervision of one of them, but once I got a little bit past that sort of cute toddler stage, I was really more of an obligation than something fun to play with for them. So I spent a lot of time riding around in the back seat of my sister's car, hanging out with all her friends, listening to 70s rock. I have a pretty eclectic music palette, probably because of that too. So I'm curious, my daughters grew up sharing a room together all the way through high school. They definitely had their things that they both liked that were a little bit different, but they had a lot in common, and they did a lot together, and they had a lot of friends that they were both friends with the friends. So what I started to ask was, were you alone a lot, or were you like, do you wish you had more time alone? Were you in a crowd? Were you alone, and did you miss having people around? Because there were definitely, like I said, there's definitely a lot to being alone and lonely that I dealt with as a child, and I'm not going to get into that too much today. That's a part of the stuff that I have worked through over the years to get to a point where I can be grateful and look at the positives. And I hope you'll share your stories. I hope you'll let me know, like, if you had some positives to being alone, or positives to being in a big family. I know that they exist in both worlds. And I love to hear your stories. I know I say this all the time, but you're going to always hear it from me, that I love to hear your stories because your stories matter. And I mean that sincerely. And I believe that telling our stories helps us to be whole and healthy human beings from a mental health standpoint. And I know maybe you don't feel comfortable commenting in a public forum like this, but you can always message me on Instagram. Instagram, my account is the same name, Crinkled Path, and I'd love to hear your stories. Not that you have to pour your heart out to me. I just really encourage you to not be afraid to tell your stories, and to share them with people who you know will give you good care back if it's a hurtful thing, or be happy with you when about the good things that happen in your life. It's just really important. And I talked about this quite a bit in one of my very first videos that just kind of explains a little bit the process that I went through to get to a place where I can think about the positives now more than the negatives. And that really puts me in this place of gratitude and joy, really. Well, my little patchwork business is coming together here. I just basically wanted to have something a little more neutral that I could write on the back of this. And I'm going to cut the cards down to be the size I need them to be. So I've just got a couple holes here I need to patch. I really have to credit all that time with creative play alone as something that really sparked my interest in arts and the understanding how when you are feeling lonely, getting out your art supplies was really a relief. And I talked about that a little bit in the video where I talked about the TED Talk that I watched. So if you didn't watch my quick and easy stress-free journaling page that I did just a couple videos ago, I talked about a TED Talk where it talks about how creating kind of puts our brains in a place of low stress and not overthinking. And so I'll mention that again here because you can go back and watch that video, and there's also a link to the TED Talk video in that post I did in the description box. Okay, so I got some plain paper on the back. Now I'm going to move these out of the way and measure to see, like, just do a rough measure to see where I need to trim these down to make them fit in the book. My paper trimmer. When I grabbed my paper trimmer today to walk it over to my desk here, I set it down and the blade wasn't in it, and I was like, uh-oh, I honestly don't know where the blade went. And so I went and got a new blade, which I needed a new blade, but I wasn't expecting to lose the other one, and I'm just hoping somebody doesn't step on it. That would not be good. Let me make sure. Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse on my farmer page here. I want to cut this one down and make sure it fits in the book. Too many things on my desk here. So let's measure this way. Okay, I'm gonna trim the bottom first. That side's crooked. Okay, trim the bottom first. Save this little piece. Hopefully I'm somewhat on camera. This piece. Flip this up. Get a pencil. Just give it a little mark. Flip it over. I'm going to trim this edge because it's where I ripped it out of the book and it's just a little rough. And then hopefully that'll make it just the right size. For in the book, there we go. And since I'm going to be tacking my flip outs on this side, it's okay. I want it as tight against the little holes down here as I can get it. And then, before I glue that in, let me just go ahead and keep cutting while I've got my cutter here. So I'm gonna have to trim these down a little. So maybe I will cut as much off of this side without losing the pictures. Too much of the pictures. First. I'm still gonna have to take more off of this other side. See. Pencil again. Okay, I'm gonna cut it this way so I don't have to look. Cutting part of the picture off. Not too bad. Okay, and then let's go ahead and glue this down before I cut these, before I cut them this way. If you remember back to my pool, summer memory pool page, you remember that I got the sibling experience because of my neighbors. I was with them a lot, especially in the summers. And everybody thought that my best friend was the one who was not from the family because I looked more, I think her brother and I looked more alike than she and her brother in a lot of ways. All right, we got our Farmer and the Dell paper on there. Now we want to cut our journaling cards. this skinny one, and then doesn't have to be perfect here. There, and then there. The one thing about doing junk journals, or you know, using items like this, like old book pages and stuff, is that if it's not completely straight or the measurements are just eyeballed, it's really okay. Like, kind of adds to the character of it, I think. So I like that stress-free feeling of this kind of creating, for me anyway. And I get that I get the question a lot, like, how do I start, and how do I do this? And really, I hope that these videos inspire you to just take what you have and see how it comes together, because I feel like it starts sort of developing on its own, and you just have to go with it. Now I want to make some hinges to go on the page. I'm going to use this again. This is a really nice heavy Crabtree and Evelyn shelf paper. It is old. I think I got it in as a gift when I was in college, and still had a couple sheets of it in a box, and I'm like, well, that's kind of silly to save when I could be using it for junk journaling. All right, scoot this over. Maybe I'll just do one long hinge. Is it long enough? No. Never mind. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to cut these the width of my cards. I'm gonna have to make another one because this piece isn't long enough. Okay, got my hinges made. Now I'm gonna glue these down right on the edge. Start with the bottom, and then I'm gonna add the one on the top, and then I'll center the one in the middle, because it's not gonna, and hopefully it's not gonna overlap, but hopefully it's not gonna be, you know, right against each other. See, it's gonna have a tiny little bit of a gap, which is fine because then they will move easily. Okay, hopefully I got them straight so that they don't open and whack into each other. Now I'm going to put some glue on the top of the hinge and put these in place. So are you familiar with this song? And when you sang the verse, the cheese stands alone, the cheese stands alone, hi-ho the dairy-o, the cheese stands alone. Did you think the cheese was lonely or victorious? Because he had the whole circle to himself. So I spent a lot of my life feeling like a lonely cheese and being sad for the cheese. And I'm really trying with this exercise of looking at things from a different perspective. I'm trying to be the conquering, standing triumphant at the end of the song, cheese alone. Anyway, I have this. It came out of a book that had just all different kinds of household things in it, and I cut them all out, and it was like from every room of the house. It was like a children's picture book that just had tons of words and different pictures, but it was these cute watercolors, and this is a blue cheese. And since I have all this blue on the page, I love that I have a little blue cheese to add to my page. And now, how do I want to put this on? I think I'm just going to put it smack in the middle. And I also thought that the song, when I got older and I could start reading the words, I always thought it was dairy, like D-A-I-R-Y, like dairy goods. I'll have to look up the origin of what dairy-o is, D-E-R-R-Y, dairy. Because I assumed, because they were talking about cheese, it had something to do with dairy. I think I'm going this way with my cheese. And put the shadow in the bottom. Anyway, that's just a silly thing that came to mind. Somebody was talking about word origins, and I'm always been one of those people who I have to look it up. Like, why is the phrase that way? Now, I want my cheese stands alone verse number 9. I'm going to cut the 9 off. Okay, and I get a little piece of paper to put him on so he doesn't disappear into the page. I'm really liking this Craft Bond all-purpose Elmer's glue stick. It's working really well. I haven't had very good luck with glue sticks. Maybe it's just because I have the air conditioner running and it's not so blasted hot in here today that it dries before it gets on the page. Okay, I think we need some tabs on this. And then I also wanted to put the other little verses. Let's put this over. I'm going to cut out the other verses and put those on. So let me do a quick fast forward cutting thing here. Alright, so our last thing is, before my journaling, is I want to put some kind of a little tab here. This might work. Let's see what it looks like on the front. That's not bad. Okay, so I got some blue for the front, and then the back is kind of this creamy color. This is some of the stuff I was using on the collage from the Fox and the Goose page. I'm gonna get my little circle punch and cut some half circles. Line it up with the line on the side, which is the halfway mark. I'm gonna put a little bit of glue just right here on the edge, and then I'll stick this on. Try and get it straight. Am I on camera? Somewhat. I'll show you when I get it where it's supposed to be. Now this one, maybe it's easier to put it on the tab. Well, that was a great idea until it overlaps into the middle of the book, Carol. Okay, I'm gonna have to cut those down. That's okay. Wasn't thinking about the dynamics of that. And I don't want to cover up the words inside. I like them round, but for the sake of time and energy, I think I'm just going to cut them off straight and call it good. Okay. And 3 little flip out journaling spaces. So I'm gonna do my journaling off camera, and then I'll do a quick last minute flyover with my camera to show you the finished page. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.
The farmer in the dell, hi-ho the dairy-o, the farmer in the dell. The mouse takes the cheese